What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here, and I have an X-Men book that I want to talk to you about today. Uncanny X-Men: Survival of the Fittest. This collects the first 5 issues of the Uncanny X-Men series from after Secret Wars, and this is written by Cullen Bunn and drawn by Greg Land. Let me quickly talk about the art here. I'm not a huge fan of Greg Land's artwork. In the past, he has been guilty of tracing pictures of people and pictures of locations and stuff for his comic books, and that's not even up for debate. You can Google Greg Land tracing, and you will find many examples of where he was just tracing people and then trying to pass it off as original artwork. And so I've never been a huge fan of his work. Even if he wasn't guilty of tracing these photographs of people, his work doesn't look very natural. It looks very unnatural and weird. When people smile in a Greg Land comic, it looks very bizarre. The pictures, they just look very posed. They don't look very natural and organic. And so I've never been a huge fan of Greg Land's artwork. Having said that, his art here is not as bad as it has been in the past. If you compare this book with, say, Matt Fraction's Uncanny X-Men run, in my personal opinion, Land's work is a little bit better here than it was in Fraction's run. Not much better. His work still isn't very good. I still would have been much happier if any other artist on the planet had been chosen over Greg Land, but his work is not quite as bad as it used to be. It's just a little bit better. So that's something to be thankful for, but honestly, the artwork is still my least favorite part of this entire book. So those are my thoughts on Greg Land's artwork in this book. Now, on to the story itself. The story is pretty simple. Magneto has got a team of darker X-Men, and they are out to protect Xavier's dream and try to fulfill Xavier's dream, because as far as Magneto can tell, all of the X-Men are just gone. They're not actually doing what they're supposed to do, so Magneto thinks that it's up to him and this small group of X-Men to fulfill Xavier's dream. Because as you know, if you've been reading Extraordinary X-Men, Storm and her X-Men are basically off hiding in Limbo, and they're willing to protect other mutants in Limbo, but they're not on Earth actually doing what Magneto feels like they should be doing. And so Magneto is trying to stop the Dark Riders. Magneto and his group, they are trying to fight the Dark Riders, who are formerly henchmen of Apocalypse, and they believe in survival of the fittest. And so in this book, they are out killing mutant healers. Anyone who has the ability to heal other mutants, the Dark Riders are eliminating them, because they believe that these healers are getting in the way of Apocalypse's motto of survival of the fittest. And so Magneto and his team are trying to stop the Dark Riders from doing this. And that's basically the plot of this book. A few things that I thought were a little bit strange. Number one, well, this isn't so much strange, this is more just tragic. They killed Elixir. Elixir is one of my favorite newer generation X-Men, because right when I was getting into the X-Men in the early 2000s, I was reading the New Mutant series by Nunzio De Phillips and Christina Weir, and Elixir was introduced in that series. He's been around since I've been reading comics. It feels like a huge tragedy that they have gotten rid of Elixir and they've killed him in such a way. I honestly would have been okay if they had killed any of the other mutant healers that are featured in this book. We also have Shin Zorn, who is shown here, and he's not killed off. And then Triage, he shows up here, and then he's not killed off. And honestly, I don't care about either of those characters. They don't have much of a backstory. Shin Zorn was introduced forever ago, but he's hardly ever been used since he was introduced. And then Triage was introduced fairly recently in Bendis's Uncanny X-Men run, but I didn't ever really care about him. He never really did anything. So this may sound terrible, but if the Dark Riders had killed either of those two guys and left Elixir alive, I would have been okay with that. I'm really sad that they killed off Elixir. He had the most backstory out of all 3 of these characters, and was also, in my opinion, the most interesting out of all 3 of these characters. So I was really sad to see him get killed off. Maybe he'll come back someday. I doubt it. He wasn't one of these A-list characters who would definitely come back if you killed him off. He's not like Batman or Superman, where when that character gets killed off, they're 100% going to come back. It's not like that. So that was a disappointing thing for me reading this book. Cullen Bunn said that the reason that they killed him off was so that they could prove that the Dark Riders are an actual threat to this team of X-Men. That's a silly thing to say, because the Dark Riders have never been a threat. They've always kind of been a joke to me. I made a joke one time that Apocalypse, considering that his motto is survival of the fittest and all about the strong surviving, it's really weird that he worked with the Axis of Fear and the Dark Riders, who are all just a bunch of jokes and have never really been threatening or menacing at all. So this is, as far as I can tell, the very first time that the Dark Dark Riders have actually posed a threat, and they killed Elixir, and that's all that they did. They didn't really do anything else very threatening here. So that was a strange thing to me. Also, you've got the team that's featured here, and I will go ahead and say I like quite a few of the team members here. I really like Psylocke, I really like Sabretooth, and I really like Magneto. I think all three of these guys working together, I think that's really cool. I like that Magneto is still not going back to being an adversary of the X-Men. He's kind of on the line. He's not 100% heroic. He's doing some things that seem very terrifying, but he's out to preserve Charles Xavier's dream, and I really like that. But I don't really like that Cullen Bunn and Greg Land, I don't like that these two guys have gone back to making Angel be the Blue Angel of Death. Let's see if he's on the cover here. You can see him right there. There you go. You can see him right there. Before this, Angel was completely purged of the blue metal wings Angel that Apocalypse had turned him into. Back in Rick Remender's Uncanny X-Force series, he had been completely erased, and he was back to being, well, he had the metal wings, but his skin was back to being normal skin tone, and he had absolutely no memories of his former life as Warren Worthington III. And I really liked that version of Angel. Him being very childlike and being very serene and very zen, and he would just go out there and there might be a dead bird or something, and he would bring it back to life with his special celestial seed powers. I thought that was a really interesting version of Angel. In fact, probably the most interesting that Angel had been in a very long time. I don't understand why this creative team has taken him back to being the mindless, brainless Apocalypse servant that he was. Well, he was never actually mindless and brainless, but now he is physically in the form that he was when Apocalypse turned him into his Horseman of Death, but now he seemingly doesn't have any personality at all. He's basically just a weapon that Psylocke controls telepathically. I don't think that that's as interesting as what they were doing with Angel before, after Avengers vs. X-Men and after Rick Remender's Uncanny X-Force run. So, in my opinion, that's a step down for this character. Also, Angel used to have healing powers. In fact, just fairly recently he had healing powers. Whenever he was going around and he was the more childlike Angel in Wolverine and the X-Men, he was able to bring animals and stuff back from the dead. So he had healing powers. It seems like a huge missed opportunity that this entire book is about the Dark Riders finding healers and killing them, and then you've got Angel, who at one time had healing powers, and now this book completely ignores that. That is just really weird to me. Unless Cullen Bunn and Greg Land make some huge, awesome story about Angel being back to the way he was, like he is in this book, I really don't like that they've regressed Angel here. I really like the way that he was before this creative team got a hold of him. While we're talking about things that I don't like about this book, I don't entirely understand why they are using M in this team. I like all the other characters that are on this team, but Monet just doesn't really fit for me. She was never really a dark character. She was always kind of, her character is handled very well here. I will admit that. She acts very much like she used to in Generation X and Peter David's X Factor series, but she's not really someone who would belong on a team of dark characters, if that makes any sense. And Cullen Bunn, as near as I can tell, basically he just wanted to use this character because he likes her a lot. He said that on Twitter before, and that's fine. If you like a character, that's great, but you have to keep in mind, if the character does not fit in the story that you're wanting to tell, should you really use that character just because you like that character? I saw somebody somewhere, they mentioned that it would have been a better idea to have used Polaris instead of Monet, and I think that would have been a really good idea. Polaris kind of has that very strained father-daughter relationship with Magneto, and also she's kind of treaded that line of villainy before. At one point, she was a horse person of Apocalypse. She was possessed by malice for a long period of time, and that kind of affected her mentally. So it would have made a lot of sense for her to have been on this team, and since they're fighting servants of Apocalypse, she would have been a great choice for this team. I don't really understand why, instead of using Polaris, who, as near as I can tell, we have no idea where she is post-Secret Wars, instead of using her, they use Monet, who is okay, but I don't think that she serves the story in the same way that other characters could have served. Basically, this story, it gets right off the bat, it hits the ground running. It doesn't take forever for the story to actually happen, which was a problem that I had definitely with Extraordinary X-Men and a little bit with Dennis Hopeless's all-new X-Men. But this story, it just hits the ground running, and I really like that about it. But at the same time, there were some things about it that I did not like. But overall, if you're looking for something that's kind of a spiritual successor to the X-Force runs by like Rick Remender, or even in concept, the X-Force series by Rob Liefeld, if you're looking for something that's kind of in that vein, this will be a really great book for you to check out. Darker characters who are willing to do dirty stuff to weed out the problems of this planet and kind of protect humans and mutants alike, no matter what happens. That's basically what this book is about, and so if you're interested in that, I would recommend checking this out. It's not a bad book, despite some of the problems that I had, and one of the problems, at least, that I had was just a personal thing. I really just wish they hadn't killed Elixir, but from a narrative point of view, I can see why they did that. But anyway, those are my thoughts on Uncanny X-Men Survival of the Fittest. I hope that you guys liked this review, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back with more videos throughout the rest of this week. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.